Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a new series I'm starting called The Poetry of the Psalms. That's where I analyze the Psalms in the Bible in a poetic manner, poetic lens, if you will. Poetry has taken a different face in the modern age. We know the difference between a sonnet and a haiku, for instance. But in ancient times, when the Psalms were written, poems were vastly different. They weren't too far off from songs that we know today. Every poem in this time was sung, basically accompanied by a stringed instrument of sorts. Poems like, or stories like the Beowulf in the medieval period would be accompanied by a stringed instrument, and stories like Homer's Iliad or the Odyssey would also be accompanied by a stringed instrument. The Psalms here are no different. We'll see in later Psalms that the psalmists mention stringed instruments as they're singing or speaking the Psalms. So I'd like to go through the Psalms in a chronological order, starting with Psalm 1 in this episode. And I'll begin. Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law doth he meditate day and night. And he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, that bringeth forth his fruit in his season. His leaf also shall not wither, and whatsoever he doeth shall prosper. The ungodly are not so, but are like the chaff which the wind driveth away. Therefore the ungodly shall not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For the Lord knoweth the way of the righteous, but the way of the ungodly shall perish. Now, as you could tell there, I'm using the King James Version of the Bible. That's what I have available to me now. Okay, let's break this down. We can see that the psalmist is using his surroundings to convey a deeper meaning. So we can tell there already it's a method of poetry that is still used today, where you take your surroundings, whatever it is, to convey a metaphor or a deeper philosophy that you're trying to convey in your poetry, where he would use trees, water, chaff blowing in the wind to convey a deeper meaning. So let's analyze that deeper meaning. Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly. So let's start with that. So basically, there seems to be a perception of reality where there is a distinct difference between people that walk in a right way and people that walk in a wrong way, an ungodly way. nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. So here we can see a deeper detail of what ungodly means. I think the majority of us will understand what sin means, sort of the wrong way to do things. And sitteth in the seat of the scornful. That's I think a deeper description of, again, what sin means, what wrongdoing means. So to scorn someone would be to judge them in a harsh way, sort of going on your perception of what is right and wrong, and scorning someone for doing wrong according to you. So there's a sense of selfishness in judging that person in that way, and that's part of being ungodly, seeing maybe the world in the perspective of you being God, rather than adhering to the law of the God of the Bible, Yahweh. So the next part would be, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law doth he meditate day and night. So there we see confirmed that a righteous and godly man would stand in the law of Yahweh, unshaken in the law of Yahweh. So this man would be not scornful and would not be in that manner ungodly, but meditates day and night on the law of the Lord. So that takes up the majority of his time and his emotions and his efforts. He ponders on the law of Yahweh, which I think would be quite beautiful. There is an element of beauty to that, for sure. So now we start to see the use of metaphor here in verse 3. And he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, that bringeth forth his fruit in his season. His leaf also shall not wither, and whatsoever he doeth shall prosper. So the psalmist is using metaphor, comparing the actions, the life lived of those who walk in the law of Yahweh to those who don't. A man who walks in the law of Yahweh is like a tree planted by the rivers of water, that bringeth forth his fruit in his season. So there we can see with season the element of time. Over the expanse of his time on earth, he will be rooted in the law like a tree planted by the rivers of water. He'll be rooted in the law of Yahweh throughout every season, and as a result of this, bring forth fruit in every season. His leaf also shall not wither, and whatsoever he doeth shall prosper. So this seems to be an undying tree, because trees typically would wither, and at a certain point they would ultimately die. But if it says here, his leaf also shall not wither, that indicates an undying tree. So there's an element of divinity there, with going past the element of time, surpassing the element of time, when you dwell in the law of Yahweh. Next, the ungodly are not so, but are like the chaff which the wind driveth away. So the chaff would be the remnants of wheat in the field. So they would get the grains from fields of wheat to grind bread, but there's a lot of waste, stems and all that, certain leaves. That's called chaff. There's leftovers and waste from collecting grain, called chaff. And typically that would be left to the wind to blow away. So in that, we can see there's an element of uselessness. There's no groundedness, as we saw in the previous verse, where there's a tree rooted by the waters. Now there's no rootedness whatsoever, and the wind can easily sway the chaff to blow away. So that further details what a person that doesn't walk in the law of Yahweh is like, that what their path is like, which I think is a very beautiful metaphorical way to sort of convey that. Very, very beautiful, actually. Next, therefore the ungodly shall not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. I suppose the term judgment refers to they will not stand in the authority of Yahweh, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. So I guess sinners would be cast out from the community of those who do keep in the law of Yahweh. They'll sort of be outcast because of their unrighteousness. For the Lord knoweth the way of the righteous, but the way of the ungodly shall perish. So there we know it's confirmed. Those who walk in the path are secure in knowing where Yahweh will take them, and sinners, their path is destruction, ultimately. Those who walk outside the law of Yahweh will know destruction. There's a lot of deep thoughts in just this psalm alone. There's a lot of deep concepts going on here. But I think the psalmist in as simple a way as he could, using, again, metaphor of trees and seasons and chaff, in as simple a way he could, conveyed the message rather well. But let me know in the comments below what you think about this. Let me know if I got anything wrong, or I don't know, something like that. And let me know if you'd like to hear more of this. Let me know what other things you'd like me to analyze, what other stories perhaps you'd like me to analyze, other poems. Maybe we can, as I mentioned, go into the Iliad, go into the Odyssey, go into Beowulf. Let me know if you'd like to see that. Otherwise, take care, and I will see you soon.